So last night we left off with our first fuel stop just across the Ohio River in West Virginia. As we headed south after the fuel stop, we came through West Virginia State Capitol and entered into the Appalachian Mountains. The old big block runs pretty good, but you have to keep this thing wound up to keep things rolling efficiently. I try and keep the tack needle up around 3,000 to 3,500 as we're pulling the big hills. And as you can see here, the old big block was feeling it. The manifolds were glowing red. There's a couple tunnels as we go down 77, headed to North Carolina. The first one is the West Virginia into Virginia. By that time, Scrappy was getting kind of tired. The rest of us were doing okay. But by the time we got down to the next tunnel, from Virginia into North Carolina, old Scrapper, she was about to conk out. She couldn't even hold her head up anymore and resorted to sticking her head in the steering wheel. We finally made it down into Winston-Salem, North Carolina around 3 o'clock in the morning. The tow gets a lot easier once you get to this part of the state. And headed east towards the track, we were rolling pretty good. We made it to the track around 4:30 this morning. We got tucked into bed and I woke up around noon today to the sensation of Weasel Pig humping Chevy. Molly was swatting her trying to get her to stop, and out of respect for Chevy, I didn't record it. Now Chevy and Weasel Pig usually get along pretty good. But June, on the other hand, she's like the fun police. She sits back and observes everything that's going on, and if anybody gets a little too far out of control, she's the first one on scene to put the stop to it. Once everybody got woken up, we went ahead and pulled the truck and trailer inside and found us a nice pit spot under these pines up on the hill. Beautiful place to set up camp for the weekend for sure. Billy unloaded the S10 and we started getting everything unpacked so we can check out the track. Molly got busy building a campfire spot with some firewood that we found laying around. And I took a ride on a scooter with June Pup to go check out everything that's new. Now I can't help but think about the fact that this place has all this beautiful infrastructure, the grandstands, this beautiful track surface, all this money spent to build this beautiful track, and here we are in 2021, and one of the most profitable events for this track is being run backwards on the worst possible surface you could ever imagine to host a drag race. If that doesn't give you some insight as to where drag racing is going, I don't know what to tell you. It's going back to its roots. Back before 1980, there was no such thing as prep tracks. I'll give you a little history lesson. When no prep was really starting to take off, and if you remember James Goad, the Reaper, and he spent some time with me and talked to me a little bit about what was going on with this, at that time, brand new television show. It was going to be called No Prep Kings. Nobody had ever heard of it at that time. But Reaper goes into some detail about his plan for the series and the show, and nobody knew if it was really going to take off at that time. James' original intention for that show, because he actually really created that show, is he wanted to take drag racing back to its roots. He wanted to take it back to the little mom and pop's tracks that no one had been to in years, that honestly bracket racing hadn't been keeping the bills paid. These tracks had been going downhill for a long time. And his intention was to take these television show events back to these little mom and pops tracks. And those of you who paid attention will remember when No Prep Kings first started, it was a rough way to go because a lot of these little tracks jumped at the chance to have this television show series filmed there. The problem was they've been so run down over the years, and there wasn't any money for infrastructure, and really there wasn't hardly even any money for grandstands and parking and fencing and everything that goes in. It was like going back 50 years and trying to host a national event in a cornfield at a lot of these little places. There just wasn't enough help. There wasn't enough money to even really, for the track to even get enough help there for the weekend to even get the thing off the ground. So the events started going to these bigger tracks because the infrastructure was there and they had enough money to handle the events and things like that. So, but No Prep is bringing drag racing back to its original roots, back before there was any such thing as track prep. VHT originally was the original track bite. NHRA and IHRA used to prep track surfaces. They started doing that in the late 70s, early 80s. Before that, there was no such thing as prep tracks. Now, originally back when NHRA started and a lot of the organized drag racing started, there were certain classes for cars to compete in heads up. There was no such thing as bracket racing. That didn't come about until like 1978. That's a whole nother story. The tire technology was not very good. The track surfaces were not very good. So a lot of competitors began moving the rear axle forward. The engine would be set back in the chassis, and they were making these changes to help better the traction. These cars got so out of hand, out of control, that they looked funny. Originally, these cars were FX cars, factory experimental, and they looked funny. So they got the name Funny Cars, and it took off from there. That is where today's funny cars came from. Now, a lot of people will say, but Bill, no prep racing's dangerous. Here's what I have to say about that.